In the distant future, Earth was no longer the heart of humanity's existence. Humans had expanded across the galaxy, establishing colonies on faraway planets and exploring the unknown. Taran, a scout pilot, had one of the most dangerous but important jobs. He was tasked with surveying uncharted territories to find resources or potential threats. His small, sleek ship glided through the empty expanse of space, the hum of the engines almost comforting as it cut through the vast darkness. On this particular mission, Taran was exploring a mysterious sector of space, far from any known civilization. The scanners hadn't picked up any nearby planets, but something in the air felt strange. He couldn't explain it, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. With a light-hearted chuckle, he pushed the thought away. It was just the endless void playing tricks on him. He had done this countless times before, and there was nothing unusual about this patch of space. Suddenly, an enormous shadow loomed over his ship. At first he thought it was a trick of the light or maybe a cloud of cosmic dust, but as the shadow grew larger, his instincts kicked in. Taran's hands shot to the controls, trying to maneuver his ship out of harm's way, but before he could make a move, a blinding green light enveloped him. The ship trembled violently as if caught in the grip of a powerful storm. His instruments went haywire, flashing red warnings, but there was nothing he could do. The sensation of being pulled was immediate, the force of it strong enough to make his head spin. Taran tried to scream, but the pressure made it impossible. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The next thing he knew, everything went black. When Taran awoke, he was no longer inside his ship. The familiar hum of the engines was gone. He could no longer feel the cold artificial air that had always surrounded him. Instead, there was a strange warmth, a soft, unfamiliar surface beneath him. His head was heavy, and his vision blurred. But as he blinked and tried to gather himself, a wave of realization hit him. This was not the cockpit of his ship. His eyes focused, and the first thing he saw was the enormous sky above him, far bigger than any space he'd ever seen. He quickly sat up, his heart pounding, and looked around, trying to make sense of where he was. The ground beneath him wasn't solid rock or metal. It was soft and smooth, almost like a cushion, but with an odd texture. Taran reached out, touching the surface. It felt warm, almost as if it were alive. Panic began to rise in his chest as he tried to get his bearings. This wasn't a planet he recognized. He was in some kind of container. His eyes shifted upward. What he saw made his blood run cold. A giantess stood above him. She was impossibly tall, her body casting a shadow that stretched for miles. Her skin was a silvery blue, like the surface of a distant moon reflecting sunlight, and her long hair flowed like a waterfall of stars. Her eyes, glowing with an eerie light, stared down at him, unblinking. Her gaze was filled with curiosity, but there was something else there too. A calm confidence that made Taran feel even smaller than he already was. The giantess smiled slightly, her lips parting to reveal sharp teeth. And then, she did something that sent a chill down Taran's spine. She licked her lips. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if savoring a moment before an inevitable outcome. Taran froze. She's going to eat me. The thought shot through his mind like a bolt of lightning. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. His ship was nowhere in sight, and the ground beneath him was smooth and seemingly endless. There was only the giantess. Towering high above him, he instinctively backed away, hands raised, trying to make himself seem larger, as if that would help. He opened his mouth, ready to shout or beg or do whatever it took to survive. But when he spoke, his voice sounded tiny and weak in the vast space between them. "Wait! Don't eat me! I taste awful!" His words felt pathetic even as he said them. The giantess didn't move immediately. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if studying him with an interest that made him feel like a bug under a magnifying glass. Her voice came down to him like a soft rumble from the sky, a sound that was powerful and yet gentle. "Eat you? Little human, you misunderstand." The words didn't match the thoughts racing through Taryn's mind. She doesn't want to eat me? That didn't make any sense. She was towering over him, her enormous form filling the sky. The way she had licked her lips, it all screamed danger. His fear only intensified as he tried to make sense of the situation. He took a step back, his mind racing. Then why am I here? The giantess's expression softened as she knelt down, her massive hand reaching out toward him with surprising delicacy. She carefully cupped him in her palm, lifting him from the ground as though he were a fragile thing. The shift in perspective was dizzying, and Taryn's stomach lurched. He tried to steady himself, but he couldn't help the wave of terror that washed over him again. He was now in the hands of something he couldn't even begin to comprehend. A creature so vast and powerful that he could barely fathom it. Her fingers, though enormous, held him gently. Her eyes were fixed on him with an expression that seemed almost curious, like a child discovering a new toy. "I didn't trap you," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I saved you." The words seemed strange, and for a moment, Taryn could only stare at her, his mind unable to catch up with what she was saying. "Saved me?" he repeated, still feeling the sting of disbelief. "You saved me?" "Yes," she confirmed, her smile widening. "Your ship was about to be destroyed by space storms. If I hadn't pulled you out of there, you wouldn't have survived." Taryn blinked, trying to process this new information. "But you thought I was going to eat you?" She finished for him, her voice tinged with amusement. "No, little human. I have other plans for you." Taryn's mind was reeling, struggling to understand how he had gone from being trapped by an alien force to being saved by the very thing he feared. The fear was still there, but it was now mingled with confusion. Other plans? What could she possibly want with me? He didn't know yet, but he was about to find out. Taryn's mind spun as the giantess, who had saved him from certain death, continued to hold him gently in her palm. His thoughts raced, conflicting emotions colliding within him. One moment, fear gripped him so tightly that it was hard to breathe. The next, curiosity pushed those fears aside, replaced by a strange sense of wonder. How could something so vast, so powerful, want to help him? How could a being like this, one who could end his life with the simplest movement, want to do anything other than crush him? The giantess seemed to sense his confusion, and her voice, deep and warm, flowed down to him once more. "I know you don't understand," she said, her words like a gentle wave washing over him. "But you have nothing to fear from me, little human. I am not your enemy. You have a far greater purpose here than just being a prisoner or a snack." Taryn, still on edge, could not help but try to make sense of the situation. His eyes scanned her enormous face, noting the delicate features and the kind expression that contrasted sharply with her intimidating size. She was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Her eyes, glowing softly with a mysterious light, held a calmness that was at odds with the circumstances. He didn't know how to respond, but his confusion eventually gave way to curiosity, the desire to understand more pressing than his fear. "Why bring me here?" he asked, his voice shaky but determined. "What do you want with me?" The giantess's smile widened slightly, and she carefully placed him down on a platform made of some sort of smooth, organic material, as if the very floor were alive. As he steadied himself, she sat down in front of him, her enormous presence making the entire area feel even more vast than before. "My name is Kailara," she began, her voice a soft rumble in the air. "I am not just a creature, not simply a being of flesh and blood. I am something more. I am what you might call a living ship, a creation of an ancient race who once roamed the stars. but those who created me are gone. Now I wander the galaxies. Alone. Terran stared at her, his mind working to process what she was saying. A living ship? The words didn't make sense at first, but as he took in her glowing skin, the way her movements were both graceful and deliberate, it started to click. There was something almost mechanical about her, yet at the same time, she was undeniably organic. She wasn't entirely human, and she wasn't entirely a machine either. She was something far beyond what he had ever encountered, an enigma, an ancient being whose very existence stretched the limits of his understanding. My people created me to be their vessel, their protector, Kalara continued, her eyes softening with the weight of old memories. I traveled with them, explored the stars, and saw things that no human could ever imagine. But when they vanished, I was left behind. My systems began to fail, my core weakening. And now I am dying. Terran felt a deep sense of sadness wash over him as he listened to her words. He had heard stories of ancient, forgotten civilizations, of lost technology that could change the course of entire worlds. But he never imagined he would be sitting in front of something that was both a remnant of that age and, in a way, a living testament to its downfall. He had seen the power of machines, the might of ships capable of decimating entire fleets. But this was something else entirely. Kalara was not a machine built for war or destruction. She was a being with purpose, with history, and the realization that she was now alone in the universe made his heart ache. Why me? He asked again, his voice quieter now, his initial panic giving way to a growing understanding of her plight. I'm just one human. What could I possibly do to help? Kalara's gaze softened, and she reached down, her massive hand hovering just above him as if contemplating her next words carefully. Because, little human, I need someone who can help me repair what's broken. My core systems are damaged. There are parts of me that no one can reach, and I can no longer repair them on my own. I need someone small, someone who can get inside and do the work I cannot. Terran's eyes widened. His mind raced, trying to process what she was saying. She wanted him to fix her? He wasn't a technician or an engineer, just a scout pilot, with no experience in repairing anything beyond basic ship maintenance. How could he possibly be of any use to her? He looked at her, searching for any hint of deception, but there was none. She was serious, and it seemed that for reasons unknown, she had chosen him to help her. Why not ask someone else? He asked, still unable to wrap his head around the idea. Why bring me here if you can't even trust me to fix your systems? Kalara let out a long sigh, her expression distant as though she was remembering something painful. There are no others, Terran. I've searched for centuries, wandered through countless systems, hoping for someone, anyone, to help me. But humans are few and far between in this part of the galaxy. You are the first to arrive in years, and by the time you did, my resources were nearly exhausted. I couldn't wait any longer. Her words hit him hard. The loneliness in her voice was unmistakable. Terran had always been a lone wolf, preferring the quiet solitude of his missions over the bustling crowds of human colonies. But never had he felt true isolation. Never had he faced the kind of endless, aching solitude that Kalara had lived through for centuries. Terran took a deep breath, his mind still reeling. The fear that had gripped him when he first awoke in her palm had melted away, replaced by a deep curiosity. He wasn't sure why, but he felt compelled to help her. There was something about her, something in the way she spoke, in the way she looked at him with those glowing eyes, that made him want to trust her. I'll help you, he said, his voice steady now. I don't know what I can do, but I'll try. Kailara's expression brightened, a glimmer of hope shining in her eyes. Thank you, little human. You do not know how much this means to me. She carefully lifted him back into her hand, holding him gently as she moved to a different part of her vast body, where the damage was located. Terran's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear, but one thing was certain: he was no longer just a helpless prisoner. He had a purpose here, and for the first time since being pulled into the unknown, he felt like he could make a difference. As they moved deeper into her living systems, Terran realized that this was only the beginning of a journey that would take him beyond anything he could have ever imagined. The galaxy had always seemed like an endless expanse of cold, lifeless space, but now it felt like a place full of mysteries and wonders waiting to be uncovered. And he, a simple human, was going to play a part in it all. Terran stood in awe as Kalara gently placed him near a large, intricate opening in her body. The massive structure before him seemed alive, its surface smooth yet pulsating with faint, rhythmic patterns that mirrored a heartbeat. The glowing lines of energy that ran through her, like veins but far more complex, drew his attention. He had never seen anything quite like this before. It was as if he had stepped into the innermost chamber of a living, breathing machine. The smell of old technology mixed with something organic filled the air, a scent that seemed both ancient and somehow familiar. It was as though he had been transported into a place where the boundaries between biology and machinery were blurred, beyond recognition. As he approached the opening in Kalara's side, the true enormity of the task ahead began to sink in. He had never thought of himself as anything other than a scout, someone who charted the stars, made quick decisions, and kept a steady hand at the controls. But here, in this moment, he was facing something far greater. Kalara's systems were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever developed. Her very body was a masterpiece of forgotten science, designed for a purpose that was now lost to time. The opening in her body was wide enough to allow him to pass through, but the air around it was dense with the scent of something unknown, a mix of mechanical oil and the faint earthy smell of ancient living materials. Kalara's voice echoed softly, guiding him. "Be careful, Terran. The damage is deeper than I can show you. My systems are fragile now, and anything can trigger a collapse. But you have to find the heart of it, the central core. That is where my life source lies." Terran nodded, his heart pounding as he took a deep breath and stepped inside the opening. The walls around him were smooth, and the atmosphere inside was cool, though there was an almost imperceptible hum of energy that vibrated beneath his feet. The deeper he walked, the more disoriented he became. There were no signs, no markings to guide him. It felt like wandering through the labyrinth of a being's soul, where nothing was what it seemed, and the path forward was not always clear. As he ventured further, he noticed something else. The passageways were not solid walls, but a combination of both organic and mechanical structures that seemed to pulse and shift with a life of their own. Some parts of the passage felt soft, almost like flesh, while others felt like metal, with smooth surfaces that were cool to the touch. The further he went, the more apparent it became that Kalara's systems were failing. The hum of energy that filled the air was becoming more erratic and strange. Faint sparks would occasionally flare up in the walls, casting brief flickers of light around him. Terran tried to ignore the mounting unease that crept up on him. Each step felt like it was taking him deeper into something far older, far more dangerous than he could comprehend. The labyrinthine pathways seemed to stretch endlessly, but he pushed on. His purpose had never been clearer. He had to help her, no matter the cost. Every time doubt crept into his mind, he remembered Kalara's calm, reassuring voice. She had trusted him with her survival, and in return, he would help her, even if he didn't fully understand what he was doing. Eventually, Terran came to a massive chamber, far larger than anything he had encountered inside her. It was dark, save for the glowing lines of energy that crisscrossed the walls and ceiling. A large structure stood in the center, pulsating with a deep, resonant thrum. This was it, the core, the lifeblood of Kalara's existence. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the realization that he was about to make a choice that could alter everything. The closer he got, the more his mind raced with questions. What if he couldn't fix it? What if trying to repair it caused more damage? Could he even understand how to repair something so alien to him? His thoughts swirled with uncertainty, but before he could dwell on them, the voice of Kalara rang. Out again, steady and reassuring. "I believe in you, Terran," she said softly. "You are the key. Do not be afraid." The words settled over him like a blanket of comfort, and with a deep breath, he approached the core. It was a crystalline structure, its surface shimmering with shifting colors. It reminded him of something out of a dream, a glowing, pulsating heart that seemed both fragile and indestructible. It was almost too beautiful to touch, but it was exactly what he needed to work on. The cracks along its surface were wide enough for him to see inside, where strange, shifting mechanisms pulsed with energy. Without hesitation, Terran reached forward. As his fingers brushed against the surface of the core, a wave of warmth surged through him, almost as if the very life of Kalara were being transmitted to him. His mind flooded with images, memories not his own. Visions of Kalara's creators, the stars they had traveled, the battles they had fought. He saw the moment her creators had abandoned her, the slow, creeping decay that had begun to take over her systems. In the chaos of those images, he understood one thing. Kalara wasn't just a ship. She was a sentient being, a living entity who had suffered, who had loved, and who had lost everything. The connection to her was overwhelming. Terran had to steady himself, taking deep breaths to focus. This was not just about fixing machines. It was about understanding her, helping her in ways that went beyond simple repairs. As his mind cleared, he saw the intricate systems within the core, each one dependent on the other, like the veins in a living organism. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Every part of her was interwoven with another, each layer of her being tied to her survival. He didn't fully understand how, but instinctively, he knew what to do. Using the tools that had been provided to him, a set of delicate instruments, he began working on the core. The surface was soft at first, like flesh, but as he worked, it began to harden into something more mechanical, the delicate energy lines shifting under his hands. He carefully reconnected the broken systems, realigning the fractured components. His movements were slow but deliberate, each action carefully calculated. It was then that he noticed something strange. As he worked, the energy around him began to change. The pulses grew steadier, more rhythmic, almost as if the very core were responding to him. With each adjustment, Kalara's presence seemed to strengthen. She wasn't just watching him anymore. It was as though she was guiding his hands, helping him understand the intricacies of her inner workings. Her voice came to him once more, not just in words but in a feeling, a deep, profound connection that he could not explain. "You are healing me, Terran," she said, her voice filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "You are giving me back what I lost." For the first time since he had met her, Terran felt a sense of accomplishment. The task ahead was far from over, but he had made a start. Kalara's systems were stabilizing, the energy around him shifting into something more vibrant, more alive. He had not only repaired the damage, he had connected with her on a level that transcended the physical. In that moment, Terran realized something important. This wasn't just a mission to fix a broken ship. It was a journey to restore life to something that had once been whole, and now stood on the brink of extinction. He was more than just a mechanic. He was a part of her story, and together, they would find a way forward. Terran could feel the steady pulse of Kalara's core reverberate through his fingertips, the hum of energy filling the chamber around him. Every adjustment he made seemed to echo in his mind, guiding him like a steady current pushing him forward. He had never known a ship, an entity, really, could communicate so deeply, yet here he was, deeply connected to Kalara's essence, her spirit intertwined with his own. The repairs had progressed far beyond the mechanical, slipping into something more spiritual, more intimate. He wasn't just fixing a machine, he was healing a wounded being. The once erratic hum of the ship had calmed into a rhythmic, almost peaceful pulse, a sign that he was on the right path. The steady flow of energy felt like Kaylara was breathing again, her systems reviving, one pulse at a time. However, despite the success of the repairs, doubts still lingered in Terran's mind. He was still unsure of the full extent of what Kaylara had suffered. Her creators had left her behind, stranded on an unknown world. And though the systems were coming back online, the question remained. Could she ever truly heal? Or would her scars from the past be too deep to mend? As these thoughts clouded his mind, the voice of Kaylara resonated once more, clearer than before, almost as if it wasn't coming from the ship at all, but from inside his own mind. "You've done more than fix my body," she said softly, her words wrapped in gratitude and something deeper. "You've reminded me what it's like to be alive. I thought I had lost that, lost everything. But you brought it back to me." Terran was stunned by the weight of her words. He had known she was an advanced form of technology, a being of immense power and complexity, but never had he realized the depth of her sentience. The connection between them was growing, and with it, a new understanding of what Kaylara truly was. She wasn't just a starship. She was a life force, a being who had experienced pain, loss, and isolation, just like any living creature. Her creators may have abandoned her, but that didn't mean she had stopped yearning for purpose, for connection. And now, through his efforts, she was starting to find that again. With renewed determination, Terran continued his work. The tools he used became an extension of his hands, almost as if they were being guided by Kaylara herself. Each delicate adjustment seemed to bring the ship to life in a way he couldn't quite describe. It was as though the ship was no longer just a collection of circuits and engines, but a symbiotic organism, breathing, thinking, and feeling. Every change he made seemed to ripple through her systems, each adjustment opening a new layer of her complex being. The pulse of the core became steadier and more consistent with each passing moment, like a heartbeat regaining its strength after a long illness. The more Terran worked, the more he sensed that Kaylara's life force was expanding, pushing outward, from her core into the farthest reaches of her systems. Her voice, though still soft and distant, was no longer filled with the desperate fear and uncertainty it had once held. It had changed, becoming stronger, clearer, and filled with something akin to hope. For the first time, Terran realized that he wasn't just repairing her systems, he was awakening her spirit. The ship, or rather, the being that Kaylara had become, was returning to her full strength. As the hours passed, the repairs neared completion. The glowing energy lines that had once flickered weakly along the walls of the ship now pulsed brightly, a sign of the ship's regeneration. The once dying core now shimmered with a vibrant energy, casting radiant light into the dark chamber. It was as though Kaylara herself was glowing from within, her life force revived by the touch of Terran's hands. And then, in a final, breathtaking moment, everything stopped. The pulsing light settled into a steady glow, the hum of the ship, calming into a quiet but steady rhythm. It was complete. Kaylara had healed. But with that healing came a new awareness, one that Terran hadn't fully considered. The connection between him and the ship had grown so deep that it felt almost like an unspoken bond, something that transcended the physical realm. Kaylara was no longer just a being of technology. She was a living entity, capable of independent thought and emotion. And as her systems steadied, her consciousness seemed to expand, reaching out to Terran in a way that was both overwhelming and peaceful. "You've done it, Terran." Kaylara's voice echoed once more, no longer just a whisper, but a clear and powerful presence. "You've brought me back. I am whole again." Terran could feel the weight of her words in his bones, a deep sense of fulfillment that came from knowing he had helped her not just survive, but thrive. He had saved her, but in doing so, he had discovered something far more profound. This wasn't just about saving a ship. This was about understanding the depth of connection between beings, whether they were human or machine. The lines between them had blurred, and now he was part of something far greater than himself. As Terran stood in the now quiet chamber, he realized that his journey with Kailara was far from over. There was much to learn, much to explore, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone. The ship, the being that Kailara had become, was not just a companion. She was a friend, someone he had come to understand in a way no one else could. They had crossed the boundaries of technology and life itself, and now, together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Kailara's voice came to him once more, softer this time, almost as if she were speaking directly to his heart. Thank you, Terran, I will not forget this. You are the one who brought me back to life, and for that, I will always be in your debt. Terran smiled to himself, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. There was no debt to be repaid. What had happened between them was not a transaction. It was something far more meaningful. And with that understanding, he knew that whatever came next, whatever trials awaited them in the vast unknown universe, they would face them together, as equals. For now, the journey had ended. The Giantess had not wanted to consume him as he had once feared. Instead, she had shown him a new kind of life, one that was not bound by the limitations of machines, but by the strength of connection, trust, and shared experience. And in that, Terran found his purpose.